All right, good morning, guys. Hopefully everyone's having a good week. We'll be seeing this on Thursday, but it's actually Tuesday morning for me and Tom here. So
No,
we're
it's
going.
Wednesday morning,
It's
isn't it?
Wednesday morning. Yeah, man, getting my day.
Wow,
No,
it's
no,
been a
no,
bad
no,
week for you.
no. It's Tuesday, I think. Is it Tuesday or is it
No.
Wednesday? No, it's
Down,
Wednesday.
down in my
It's
corner it says
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
It's
Don't mess with
Wednesday.
me like
Okay, I'm
that, Adam.
sorry.
I've been on PTO. My days are all screwed up anyway, so hey.
I've just been working so hard in case my boss
Yeah,
sees this.
let's go with that.
But hopefully everyone's doing good. We wanted to talk about some of the updates. One of the things I've been finding out pretty quickly, I'm sure you're probably in the same boat, Tom, when we first kind of put together this concept, I was like, oh man, I wonder if there'll be stuff to talk about. It's almost, there's so much stuff to talk about, it's like trying to figure out where to go through. But
Yeah, it's like people are going, why'd they choose those anyway? It's like, because we wanted to.
Yeah, exactly, right? But so hopefully everyone's having a good week. We did have several things we wanted to talk about. There's a ton of new SharePoint stuff coming on that Tom's going to hit on. But we wanted to cover some of the stuff that we think will actually be helpful to you guys. In interest of kind of what we talked about in the first show of getting stuff together, we're going to be moderately quick today. And the idea that, realistically speaking, we just have a couple updates. We want to keep you guys informed of what's going on. So we'll go ahead and dive into it. I wanted to start with something I think is really, really cool. I know you have a little bit of experience with this, Tom, so you can feel free to chime in and let me know what you've seen with it. But so AIP stands for Azure Information Protection. For you guys who haven't worked a ton with it, this is kind of the evolution of information rights management, which for a while was called Azure Rights Management. It's kind of rebranded everything under the umbrella of AIP. Basically, if you're dealing with like data protection and stuff like that, it's typically going under the AIP umbrella in the Microsoft Cloud. But so AIP is pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do. If anyone's familiar with labels from back in the day in Office 365, those have kind of been rolled up into AIP. But a couple weeks ago, they actually have rolled out a new AIP Scanner UI. So the AIP Scanner is basically a way you can go through and you can configure default labeling and default protections and stuff like that. You can basically put together stuff that will go through and look at your documentations, look at your documents, stuff like that. So that way it's applying the labels in the way you want. It's basically ways you can go in and you can create stuff that will say, okay, I want you to go through and look at this stuff on here. And you can actually do it from tons of different servers that you have in Azure. You can do it from SQL. You can do it a whole bunch of different stuff. It's really cool. And they've had this functionality for a bit, but they've basically been going through and re-putting it and repackaging it together in one clean UI for you to use. And so this is kind of an evolution of them going through and just making it easier. More types of stuff that you can do is stuff like PDFs, zip files, things like that. You can actually go into the contents of those and look for data. So say you're wanting to say, cool, there's this sensitive data. I want to make sure I'm HIPAA compliant. I have to be going through and looking for PII data. I have to be going through and looking for stuff like that. Well, you can actually go through and be scanning the insides of those documents for looking at stuff kind of like DLP, but AIP is specifically can go through and say, okay, well, if it is there, I'll put this protection level on. I want to make sure only certain people can't get it. Really cool stuff like that. You can actually even provide protections internally to your organization. One of the rules I always like to use, say, you want to use the cloud, but you have a document that has your executives' bonuses on there. Well, you probably don't want everyone in your company seeing your executives' bonuses. So you can go through and limit the access to that to a certain security group or Office 365 group. Cool functionality there, and realistically, they're just putting it in a new AI that's easier to use. And that's actually found in the Azure portal itself. So if you haven't, dabbled over to the Azure portal and you're doing some 365 stuff, more and more of their advanced security features are starting to show up there, and that's actually where you can find the AIP scanner.
Cool. We haven't done a lot of that, but I know that it's kind of on our radar to figure out how much of that kind of stuff are we going to do once we start going more into the full-scale SharePoint Online, things like that. So I'm encouraged to see that because it's going to make it that much easier when we do get to that point, that we're not going to have to fight the old stuff and people go, this is cumbersome. We're going to have newer, easier ways for people to go out there and do it instead of having us having to do everything because they can't figure it out. So
yeah, I've loved the AIP stuff so far. I've had several strategic conversations with some of my coworkers that are like, engineers in the field working with customers, and some of them have had some nitpicky stuff about it, specifically when you look at order of operations of how some of the protections are applied in AIP. It's a little bit different from traditional SharePoint IRM. So when you're talking about, for instance, in IRM, you kind of had the option to provide protection layers once files were checked out but not in their resting state. And for some people that was good, right? Because you didn't want to block your internal users. You just wanted to do it when they went through and started doing stuff. And AIP more has you're going through and putting it in the source of the file and stuff like that. I kind of like the second option. I think it's a little bit more secure. But with that said, I do think there's some functionality there that you're going to have to figure out what's right for your organization. So moving on, my last two are going to be pretty quick. One of them, I'm going to talk a little bit about what they're doing, but I really wanted to touch on the concept of why they're doing it this way. So if you guys go through and check out the roadmap in the last week or two, they've actually had several updates that have come out for the Outlook web interface. And it hasn't been big stuff that they've been doing, but it's basically new features they're coming out with. For instance, they're now doing it that they have what they call suggested meetings to give add-on by default. So if you're going
yes, I saw that one yesterday.
Yeah, so if you're going through and you're doing an email and you want to do a meeting, it's going to automatically go through and start doing some of the hey, this time might work for you, stuff like that, and have that integration in there. Not a big thing, especially for those of us who have maybe used Find Time or something like that before, but new functionality that they're seeing going through. There's been other stuff they've been doing too. They have suggested attachments have gotten a little bit more advanced.
Saw that too.
They had in the past, they had recent attachments, but now it tries to do a little bit more, intelligence of, okay, well, you're dealing with this person. These are the documents you've been dealing with them recently. And the main reason I wanted to bring this up, I think it's cool. I think you can go in and experience it. But one of the main things is how you see the development path when Microsoft goes through this is they will normally develop for the web interface first. So the new features that they come out with, you'll typically see for Outlook, for instance, show up in Outlook for the web. And then the development cycle then typically flows to the clients themselves. So I feel like this is a great precursor to some of the features you can probably expect in a month or two, or maybe a little bit longer to actually show up in the next developments of Outlook that's coming out. And if you have, Pro Plus and you're developing your Outlook, you'll eventually see this functionality in your actual clients themselves. So if you want to see them, you want to get a preview of what they're doing, good thing to check out. And I know you actually had an experience with this. You want to talk about that a little bit, Tom?
Yeah, yesterday I went out to Outlook because one of the features that they have in the now old Outlook is you can go into options, do mail options, and then up in general in the corner, there was an option for distribution lists. And you'd click that and it'd sit there and think a while. And then it would come up and tell you what distribution lists you're part of and which ones you actually own. Like, that's cool. So yesterday I had a need for that, and I went out and it says, hey, you can check out the new Outlook. And I'm like, well, of course I'm going to check out the new Outlook. I need tips for 1 minute office magic here. So I clicked it, and at first I was kind of like, and what's different? But, of course, the pop-up that tells you what the main things are comes up, and I checked out and I saw the two features that you talked about. I thought, that's kind of cool. And I liked the suggested meeting times. I thought that was really neat. What kind of disappointed me, though, was I went up to options, and instead of getting here are the different options, or here are the different links for all the options for mail and calendar and things like that, it just brought up the options. And the options were pretty bare bones.
Yeah.
And the distribution list thing wasn't one of them, at least that I was able to find. And so, I'm like, do you want to go back to the old one? I'm like, yeah, I think I really do here. So from that standpoint, I understand it's an evolution. It's a work in progress. Unfortunately, that one, I'm not going to be really happy if they turn off the go back to the old one button too early without having a lot more of the options that you can see in the old version. Having said that, that whole suggest meeting thing, we haven't done the Find Time thing. Yeah, which I know people would just love, but then it's like we've got to have the fact that they're not admins on their boxes to install it, and it's like I don't even want to go through the hassle of trying to get it okayed from InfoSec and the whole bit. This sounds like something that could be very helpful, and I love the fact that if somebody is using Outlook on the web, it's there for them now, not this, well, we're not going to get it for another 6 months or a month, or I don't know when it's rolling out to our tenant. It's there for you now. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that this functionality, the suggested meeting times, reminds me so much of FindTime. FindTime was actually developed by Microsoft. It's an add-in that they literally
The
developed.
garage thing, yeah.
Yeah, which is where you can kind of see it. I'll say, too, very briefly, I had a similar experience yesterday. I was also in Outlook on the web and also saw the Try New Outlook. I was like, oh, I like shiny things, and clicked on it. And I thought the Skype functionality was... I don't know for sure that it was less because I only stayed in there for about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Like, I don't know how to do this, but it wasn't as intuitive or how it normally was. So I went in there and I wanted to find someone to message them on Skype through OWA. I was on another computer that didn't have my Skype client installed on it, and I pulled it up and just didn't see those options. And so, like you, I pretty quickly went back to the old one and just did it the way that I know. I'm hoping some of the stuff is probably there. Maybe it's just a different way to get there now. Maybe it's a different interface like that. For instance, I could see them going the way of distribution lists in the same way they did with 365 groups, and maybe they'll like show up on the bottom left in the nav pane or something like that.
Something, yeah.
Pure speculation, but I would imagine they're trying to make it more intuitive, and normally they don't restrict functions too much. I guess we'll see where that goes. So.
Yeah, and yesterday it was one of those ones where I had traveled back from PTO, got in midday, haven't been online for a week or so.
You didn't have time to go exploring.
Yeah, it was kind of like, I kind of want to clean up my email a little bit for this morning, but dang, I'm not really into wanting to dig into technical stuff right now. So
my last thing is going to be quick, but it's something I think is really cool. So I'm a pretty big fan of Flow. When Flow came out, I have the classic developer mentality at heart that if I can program something to work automatically and never have to do it again, that's pretty amazing. And so I kind of accepted and explored Flow pretty quickly when it came out. I think it's one of the tools that if people spent the time getting familiar with it, they could really get some value out of. And I'm talking end users here, not even necessarily admins. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with it. Power Apps goes right along with Flow. They're brothers in arms when you're looking at the Office 365 suite. I have less experience there. I'm really more of a Flow person. But you're starting to see Microsoft has worked pretty hard over the last year as a whole to make both those more accessible. One of the things that you saw about a year ago that I'm sure everyone's familiar with now, they added a Flow and Power Apps tab like directly in SharePoint, for instance, right, where you no longer had to go out and explore and go directly into the applications themselves. They made it so you could click a button and then that would load up the GUI for you and stuff like that. But it basically made it more accessible. Well, I feel like they're continuing that trend. There's two things that I wanted to talk about briefly. One of the things, and this is one that I think is probably the coolest, and OneDrive they are specifically going to be rolling out here soon. I can get the actual time. So they say they're going to be rolling it out. It should hopefully be rolled out now. They're going to be doing automated templates for people in OneDrive. And so what this basically means is, say I wanted to go through and I wanted to do a flow. Some of the common flows used in OneDrive are, okay, get approval for this, item, or hey, go and convert this to a PDF. It's a Word document. I want to convert it to a PDF. They have flows to do both of those. Well, right now, if I wanted my end user to take advantage of, hey, this Word to PDF conversion, they would have to load up Flow. They'd have to log in. They'd have to find the template. They'd have to go in and create it. They'd have to go in and create all the connectors and stuff like that. And if they haven't done Flow before and they're not of interest, they're never going to do that. So what you're actually seeing inside of OneDrive is they have out-of-the-box templates that are common for people to use that I think add value. They're going to actually start putting directly into OneDrive. So rather than you having to go into Flow and configure all that, it'll say Flow convert to PDF. Someone can click on that. It'll ask for the connector too, but then it should just be working. It basically makes Flow more accessible to the people who may be afraid to go out and do it before. And then the second thing that they're doing, and I think this basically follows the same line, is you'll start to see, and this is hopefully this is out. They said it was supposed to release like they announced this at the end of January. It's supposed to be released, I believe, in Q3 of this year, which is going to line up with some of the stuff you're about to talk about. But basically, they're going to do some Power Apps and Flow packaging, where in SharePoint, it's going to actually, you can provision some of these by default when you're provisioning sites. So say you're going through and you're making SharePoint sites and you have some design that you want, rather than having to build out the sites and go in and do Flow and Power App stuff and integrate them together, they're actually putting that user experience of, okay, I want to do this with Power Apps, I want to do this with Flow, into the default provisioning for SharePoint sites. So again, won't see this for several months, but it's going to eventually be a more unified experience and unified process. And again, I think this is just in line in the hopes of getting people to use that functionality more inside of SharePoint.
Yeah, because in SharePoint 2010, where we live right now, and migrating away from, you've got the out-of-the-box workflows that you can choose, but the approval workflow is really cumbersome, and the get feedback thing, it's like, oh God, I wouldn't wish that on anybody right now. But there are people out there using them because they can just basically go fill in the blanks and it works. And to have them go out and use SharePoint Designer, which I've done a lot of cool things with SharePoint Designer, but again, if you don't have a designer mentality, it's not easy for people who just really are business people who want to get their jobs done.
Yeah.
And Flow, when it first came out, I was like, okay, this is if this, then that, and I don't see anything that's going to make me want to use this because it doesn't come close to what we do in SharePoint Designer. And over the last 1.5 to 2 years, now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is freaking awesome. And I haven't got a chance to play with it like I would like to, because just the day-to-day grind of getting stuff done. I am looking forward to starting to play with Flow and start developing some mechanisms whereby I can teach some of our power users how to do this stuff on their own, and I think it's going to end up being a really popular thing. So,
well, and it's kind of funny, your experience is what I see every organization I've ever worked with. We would go in and I would do a Flow training and a demo and stuff like that, and I'd do a demo to 15 IT people, and one of them would think it was the coolest thing ever and want to use it, and the other people never think about it again. It's
exactly.
Like, there's definitely cool stuff you can do in here, but it's right now and definitely in the past, it was a fairly large barrier of entry, and once you got past that, there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff you could do. Yeah. But it was finding the right thing. So I think this accessibility things they're doing is definitely the right move for them.
Yeah, and I find that the audience that I consider my people aren't the IT people.
Yeah.
Because most of them are like, well, I can do this in, Python, blah, blah script. I'm like, knock yourself out. I don't know that, but look what I can do with point and click over here,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to turn more people into power users and get them to be able to do their own things with it and then learn from them and take some of those learnings and incorporate them into other things for the company. So that's cool.
Sure.
So, I've only got one item to talk about, but it's kind of a multi-item. On the 29th of January, they added some SharePoint items to the roadmap, which was really cool because I saw them yesterday for the first time. And the even nicer thing about it is all of them, with the exception of one, are theoretically supposed to be released in February, this month. Now, it says February, and I'm thinking that could be February 30th, but it's supposed to be February, which is cool. I'm looking forward to seeing these things because I think it's going to make a huge difference in how people start to interact with SharePoint once we migrate them over to SharePoint Online. So there's like 6 different items I'm going to talk about. There's one other with document sets, but I've never been a big fan of document sets and never really used them all that much. But document sets are coming to the modern experience. There you go. 7th one Ben talked about. Covered. First one is you're going to be able to do multiple check-in, check-out on documents, which is cool. It's not one of those things that you probably do on a daily basis, but if you've got a number of documents that you've got checked out because you're getting ready for a major update or something like that, and I've had the question come to me, Tom, I've got these, 50 pages that are all checked out. How can I check them all in at once?
Very tedious.
Click. This is going to be nice that they can select it all in the view and just go check in, and that takes care of everything. So that's kind of cool.
I see this as a sanity update.
In some ways, yeah. It's something like you may never know it, but if you need it and it's there, you're going to love it. So. Second one is signals. So they've now got some icons that they're adding to document libraries. And they are visual indicators that certain documents are in certain states. And some of them you look at and you go, I can tell that right now without a visual indicator. But some of them don't have this. So like one is a malware. It's like a shield with an X on it. One that says this has been checked out to you, which right now you can kind of see that it's been checked out, but you can't see that it's been checked out to you. Yeah. So there's a different indicator there. The associated icon with that one is that this has been checked out, just not to you. So you're easily led to, okay, this is checked out, but is it one I have to worry about, or is it one I have to go talk to somebody else about? One that says you're missing metadata, which is kind of cool.
That could be so. Metadata is non-existent to me. I'm not a SharePoint person in the back. I've never really done a lot. But you talk to data classification people that's what their job is in SharePoint, and their world is metadata.
Oh, yeah.
I guess for certain people, that could be like the best symbol ever, because that could identify their users, hey, we rely on this metadata to properly handle stuff. You need to make sure it's there. So, like for me, I'm just kind of like, okay, cool. But I know people that, like, they're throwing a party when that comes out, you know?
Well, and the thing is, you can like put those metadata columns in a view, and if it's missing it, there's a visual indicator that that's missing.
But it's a whole
that's
column,
great.
Yeah.
But the whole column, yeah, you know, and you may not want to put all the columns that are out there, but you may want to let them know, hey, this one needs attention. So that's a good thing. There's a few DLP warning ones that are going to be good if you're using DLP. One is a trending indicator, which is kind of cool because it can indicate that this file is trending upward in viewership. And I know I've gotten a lot of people going, so how can I tell who's seeing my stuff, or if it's, I was like, yeah, that's not a real strong point right now. I said, I can give you basic. They're like, well, how can I tell how many people saw this page between this range of dates and where they went afterwards? It's like, no, not going to be able to do that one. And this one still doesn't do that, but it gives you a kind of visual indicator that, hey, this one's getting some attention, right or wrong. You may want to check on that. Record tagging, to let you know something's a record, that's a really cool visual indicator without having to go into it. There's still a new indicator out there, which is the little, sun bright thing in the corner that can give you that. And then there's also an indicator with like two little people icons to tell you something's been shared. Again, you can find that out fairly easily, but it's nice to have those little indicators in a column that just kind of give you a nice visual representation. Yeah, so that's cool. Third item that they've got out there, column totals. Column totals, if you're using Classic Views, you're like, I can do that right now, but you haven't really been able to do that in the modern interface. And now you can do it in the grouping area for either the entire list or in the groups. So you have one less reason to have to go back over to a Classic View to get some of this information. I think the one that I'm most excited about is sticky headers, because I've had so many people ask me. It's like, well, I'm scrolling through this really long list, and it usually comes into play if you were like doing the datasheet view.
Yeah, and I remember I was blown away when I found sticky headers in Excel for the same reason.
Oh yeah, it's like,
this is amazing.
The 47 columns I'm trying to pay attention to, and now I don't have to scroll back up 500 rows to find out what's going on. So that, I think, is going to be really, really large with people using views and being able to get a lot of information in a way that's useful for them and that they can easily navigate around. And the last two items they have there are adding columns in between columns. So if you've got 10 columns there right now, if you go to add a new column to the view, it's going to add it onto the end, then you have to drag it over to where you want it. Now you can basically put your cursor where you want it to be and add the column right there. Again, not a big deal, but if you're doing a lot of changes, it's nice. It's nice. And then going back to the drag and drop thing, yeah, you can easily drag and drop columns in your modern views now to make it show up where you want it to be. So you can just move it around, and life's great. So by and large, none of them are like, I argue that sticky headers might be earth-shattering, but none of them are really huge type things that are going to absolutely change the way you do your job, but put together, they're things that can make the whole view experience in SharePoint a lot nicer to be able to see information up at the front without having to dive into individual items to go get it or add additional columns to give you an idea of what's going on. So overall, I think those are really nice. Again, I'm thrilled that everything except for the sticky headers is supposed to be out this month. March for the sticky headers, so we'll see if they hit that date. But the fact that they just hit the roadmap last month and they're saying February leads me to believe that they're probably already ready to go with it or really close.
Yeah,
so.
And
That's
the
a good
Power Apps and Flow thing I talked about, that actually lines up with quarter 3 in the same way of the custom headers you're talking about. I think some of the signals might be a little bit later too, just because of the development they have there. But I think as a whole, I love that you're seeing development of this kind go into SharePoint, right? Like you said, this is not, oh, this is new features you typically get in, SharePoint 2012 or whatever is going to like next version. But I love to see the quality of life stuff that they're doing that really increases the user experience. And as you said, there's basically, most of the stuff's coming out in a month. And, some other stuff's a little bit more delayed. But SharePoint is so important to so many companies and so many of us and the companies we work with. I love to see that they are continuing to develop some of the quality of life stuff. I mean, like I mentioned, I kind of joked about it, but the metadata is going to be huge for certain people, making some of that stuff, the symbols to say, hey, this isn't here, right? Like I know people that will literally think that is the best thing since sliced bread when it comes out. And so I love to see some of this, continued quality of life development to make stuff easier. And one of the things for me, and again, this probably comes because I'm a little bit of an outsider to the SharePoint world, it's not that uncommon that I go in to work with a company and SharePoint is a dirty word. Like, they had SharePoint 2007 where you try to do everything in SharePoint and about a third of it worked well, and people are like scarred. They're like battle wounded veterans. It's just like they hear SharePoint and they're just like, nope, not using it. Like,
start getting the eye twitch,
exactly.
The whole nine
yards. They break out in hives or something. And so I love that they're continuing to do this stuff, because sometimes even I'll go in and I will train people on stuff without telling them their SharePoint. I'll be like, oh, look at this great Teams file collaboration. Just ignore the fact that it's a SharePoint document library. But I think as they continue to develop this basic stuff, but the stuff that's really quality of life improvements to really make stuff easier. And a lot of stuff you talked about, to me, as you mentioned, veteran SharePoint users is probably like, oh, okay, whatever. But people who don't know what they're doing, people who don't have the experience, that's really genuinely going to make it easier for them to use.
Right.
And I feel like SharePoint is clearly such a core backbone of the entire file collaboration side of Office 365. The more stuff I see like this, the more happy I am, because I feel like it makes that experience more accessible and usable by people who aren't traditional SharePoint people, or people who tried it back in the day and hated it. They're probably more open and say, oh, this is great. Oh, you mean I can do this? And so I love to see updates like this coming out. And like you said, I mean, I think they added 6 or 8 SharePoint things in the last week.
Yeah.
And like you said, none of them are earth-shattering, but I love to see that develop, because I feel like it's really taking a step forward to make it easier for people to consume.
Well, in the technical world I came from prior to switching over to the dark side of Microsoft and SharePoint, there was a lot of, oh, look, we've got this brand new thing called composite apps, and it was like, you went to the next major conference and everything was, you've got to be doing composite apps. And I got scarred to the fact it's like, and by the time we have this conference next year, you're not even going to admit that composite apps ever existed.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's still some of that occurs, but you get these really huge bang type installs, of which maybe 60 to 70% of it worked. The rest of it didn't. But then they were on to the next bright, shiny object. And I like the fact that they're now going in and continuing to make those little changes that does. I remember one year at this particular conference, they said, oh, and now we've actually got this new option to print from what such, and everybody stood up and cheered. I'm like, this is not a good thing. If a print option on a menu is causing widespread joy and happiness, you probably failed somewhere along the line. But seeing these kind of things come out on a regular basis, it's encouraging. So
yeah, and I think as a whole, specifically in the last couple of years, the Office 365 team at Microsoft as a whole has done a good job of bringing down some of the silos that we've traditionally seen, and the experience between the different products and the different stuff is really coming together, and it's really giving the end users we work with, or even the admins that are new to 365, a better experience. It's less of a feeling of, okay, well, I need to learn this application, then I need to learn this application, then I need to learn this application. It's more, I need to learn the ethos or the overall experience of 365, and that's going to translate through the other applications. It'll just be a different, way to approach the problem. So happy to see it. like I said, I think we end on a great note there, right? Like, you're going through and you're looking at some stuff with SharePoint. We traditionally work with a lot of SharePoint people, so I think we definitely love to see that. But realistically, I think it's great signs for some of the stuff they're coming. And as you said, it's none of it's earth-shattering, but I think it's definitely will be quality of life stuff that will really see an impact long term. So hopefully you guys enjoyed us on the Pulse this week. Next week we'll be back again. I think hopefully we'll have Jen back next week. I forget. It might still be me and Tom playing solo. I guess we'll just have to see.
Jen who?
I know, right? Like it's distant memory. It's kind of hard to remember. But I mean, like, you and I are here and we're beautiful, so it's probably a distant memory for our viewers too. Let's be real. No, I'm kidding.
We're gonna catch flack when she watches this.
Pause. We all love Jen, obviously. She is amazing. So I'm not positive if we have Jen back or not, but I know she's been kind of staying up to date. She actually texted me about something in the roadmap from her cruise. So, for those of you who know Jen, she never sleeps. So regardless, hopefully everyone enjoyed this week. A lot of cool stuff to come, and we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds good, everybody. Bye.